Jameis here. As you make your plans for the big game, go right now to get a pound of free crab legs with a purchase of $250 or more from Fulton Fish Market, an official partner of SFC. So go now to fultonfishmarket.com/free crab.
Welcome to the Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
What is up, everyone? Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NCAA and NFL edition, as we recap the national championship and go into the NFL Conference Championship weekend. Joining, as always, co-host Reese Downing. Reese, what's going on?
What's going on, brother? You doing okay?
No. That was quite the disaster, but
don't worry, I'm not doing well either. We'll talk about it in a little bit.
It just shows, it kind of gives more props to what the Patriots were able to do and what the Chiefs are able to do right now. I mean, it just shows how impressive it is. I mean, anything can happen at any point to where you lose and your season's over. I mean, to barely lose it all year and then your first playoff game be done, it's pretty terrible, but things go on. We'll see what happens in the next season. Obviously, there's going to be huge changes in Detroit along with Dallas, like you were just mentioning. We got some co-hosts joining, Scott and Carter, our Notre Dame faithful, and Ike, our Chiefs. Chiefsaholic, we'll call him. not the best, but
I'm the only happy one this week, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, he was the only person that's team survived. I'll kick it off with a little recap of the game before we get your guys' thoughts on it. So Ohio State had 34, Notre Dame 23 was the final score. Notre Dame started the game with an 18-play, 75-yard drive that took up 9 minutes and 45 seconds. They finished the drive with a 1-yard Riley Leonard touchdown run. After that drive, Riley Leonard seemed like he was completely gassed. I don't know if he had an illness or what happened. He didn't look very good on the sideline. I mean, obviously it didn't affect him a whole lot the rest of the game, but just something didn't look right with him at that point. After that, Ohio State went on to score 31 unanswered to make it 31-7. Notre Dame then had 2 touchdown receptions from wide receiver Jaden Greathouse to make it 31-23 when they got 2 2-point conversions. Notre Dame did have a chance to get the ball back late, but with 2:45 left, this happened.
Howard sitting back there with time to throw. See the backers are moving. Here they come.
Heavy pressure, Howard delivers downfield, and Smith, he's got it! Jeremiah Smith hadn't had a touch in the second half until that potential game clincher. First down at the 10.
They went 0, meaning they blitzed 7. They left everybody on an island, and Ohio State thinks that's a mismatch with Jeremiah Smith against anybody. Not only that, but the corner, Christian Gray, gave him a cushion. Didn't jam him, didn't press him. Just sat back and let Jeremiah Smith run freely off the line of scrimmage. Will Howard's family, all the Buckeye fans, LeBron James, I think they're tasting victory.
So an interesting choice of defense there, in my opinion. They were facing 3rd and 11 from their own 34. Will Howard hit a bomb to Jeremiah Smith. Pretty much sealed the game there. Ohio State ended up hitting a late field goal to make it 34-23, giving Ryan Day his first national championship. Carter, let's hear the thoughts.
Well, I was coming into this trying to be optimistic, and then you had to show me that. Kind of sick to my stomach, actually. I mean, if you're going to blitz, you got to get home, and they didn't come close all day to touching Will Howard. I don't think Al Golden really called his best game. They kind of got away from what they normally do and tried to play some zone and stuff. Nothing they threw at Will Howard and company was working. And in the second quarter, we touched the ball 7 times, kept shooting ourselves in the foot. The one they tried to get in the second drive started getting going a little bit. Then it was a holding call, and then there was another false start penalty, backed them up. And then the third drive, somehow they snapped the ball right into the receiver in motion. Just kind of a lot of uncharacteristic things for a team that they couldn't do any of that in this game. Had to play their best ball, and it gave me some hope in the second half when they started getting Greathouse involved. But there was no Jeremiah Love, no Jadarian Price. Once they got down, they kind of got away from what they are and just never had the firepower to get all the way back. Jeremiah Smith is absolutely amazing. Nothing you can really do about that. So disappointed, but kind of excited for the future. We're going to bring back about 18 starters. We'll replace the quarterback, Riley Leonard, with maybe more of a downfield passing attack with CJ Carr. And hopefully we'll be back. But, man, it's a tough road trying to win 4 games in this new playoff system. So be optimistic for next year. Try it again.
Yeah, I can tell you all too well about a defensive coordinator who is relentless in man coverage and tries to blitz even when it's not working clearly. But I guess you live and die with what you do, so I can't really say too much about it. But Scott, what are your thoughts?
I think finally the injuries caught up with him. I was worried about that the entire playoffs, but you lose basically all 4 of your starting defensive linemen at the beginning of the season, all-American cornerback, 2 out of 5 starters on your offensive line, running backs, not 100%. Yeah, the fact that they made it to the championship game with a bunch of backups is great for this year and awful for this year, but it really speaks highly for next year. All these young guys got a lot of playing time. I'm all about getting a little downfield passing. Once you're able to stack 8-9 people in the box, the good teams like in Ohio State, Penn State, even Georgia, are just going to sit on it and force you to do something different. And so I'm looking forward to moving in that direction. And we'll just kind of see the fact they ended where they ended is and how they did. I figured it'd be a close win or a blowout loss, and I don't think the score was nearly indicative of what the actual game was.
Yeah. Ike, any thoughts on the national championship?
I think you just have to give Ohio State credit for being able to take Notre Dame's biggest punch. Like that first drive was textbook perfect script for Notre Dame. And you're right, Leonard didn't really look the same after that. He puked on the sidelines. I saw that. I don't know if it was just – he ran the ball 8 times on the first drive. Is it 11-minute drive? That's got to take a lot out of a quarterback, you would think, especially with all the emotions up, the adrenaline in the big game. It's got to take its toll on you, whether you think it would or not. But you got to give Ohio State credit for taking that and responding. 31 unanswered. They showed why they're the most talented and highest paid team in the country.
I don't think they technically were the highest paid team in the country, but they were very highly paid.
20 million. One of.
Yeah, one of the. Yeah. Reese.
Well, first to talk about that clip, leave it to ESPN to find a way to pull LeBron James into a graphic.
Exactly.
The second thing I noticed out of that, Will Howard underthrew that ball. That was a touchdown. If he would have put a little bit more air under that, Jeremiah Smith had to slow down on that catch. It didn't matter, obviously, but worthwhile to mention. When we talked about this game last week, I said there were going to be a couple key factors. The first was how well Notre Dame could move the ball against this Buckeye defense. Ohio State held them to 53 rushing yards. It's going to be difficult to win games that way. Second was the approach that Chip Kelly was rolling out. There were some concerns after that performance against Texas in the previous matchup, but he ran a really balanced attack, 440 total yards of offense, almost the same through the airs on the ground. Third was how well Notre Dame's offense would adjust to the Buckeye defense. And while I don't think Notre Dame had an exceptionally bad game, it was pretty clear the Buckeyes were able to move the ball well. They controlled time of possession. They averaged over 7 yards a play, converted 9 to 12 third downs. Difficult to win ball games when your defense is playing that way. And the last was how Notre Dame responds to adversity. And I think that's really a nod to Notre Dame because that game could have gotten a lot worse, but they played the full 60 minutes. I'll give them that. Ohio State started a little slow. They did do that 31 minutes, and we talked about winning those inside 30 minutes in that second and third quarter. Buckeyes definitely did that. Those 2 touchdowns from Leonard to Greathouse, though, pulled Notre Dame back in it there for a minute. So, there was definitely a scenario there where Notre Dame could have gotten the job done. It was just, that final drive, Ohio State tore 4 minutes off the clock and then made it a 2-possession game. It was just too much. So nod to Notre Dame. Excellent season, especially dealing with all the injuries. Kind of same concept as what the Lions dealt with. The Lions overcame a lot of adversity with injuries over the course of the season, and Notre Dame had to do the same thing. It's hard to put together, to Carter's point, the ability to win 4 games against the best talent in the country and come out on top. So I do think Notre Dame as a program is going to be right back in it next year. It starts at the top, and they've got a hell of a coach in Marcus Freeman. So.
Yeah, a couple things. So that Riley Leonard, I guess he said he fell on the football, kind of upset his stomach on that first drive, on top of all the carries. So he went on the sideline and vomited after that. And then this tweet from Matt Fortuna I wanted to read. Notre Dame all year long gave up 3 touchdown drives of 75 yards in the game. They gave up four straight to Ohio State in this game, which is pretty crazy. That defense was awesome all year. And like Scott said, I think the attrition finally got to them. And the parallels with Detroit all year, I was kind of seeing that. Similar fiery coaches, and then the injuries they had to deal with and all the adversities. So they exercised a lot of demons this year. They hadn't won a New Year's Six bowl since I think 93, and they won 2 in a week this year. So a lot of good things. So I'm kind of upset about it, but hopefully they'll be right back next year.
Yeah, so Ohio State's path to the national championship started at home. They beat Tennessee. Then they went to the Rose Bowl and faced Oregon. And then they played Texas in the semifinals and then beat Notre Dame in the national championship. One thing to note, apparently this is another year we are going to have co-national champions, because Oregon is also going to be named national champion based on the mathematical rankings of Peter Wolf, which is a publication that is actually taken seriously. Oregon was the only team that finished with 1 loss this year. So just like UCF's national title was technically a real thing in 2017, this is a real thing. They are going to be, on one guy's account, Mr. Peter Wolf, his national champion. And I got to figure out how I can start naming a national champion, because I would like to do that also every year. All right. So that's done for this year. We're going to get into a few things for next year now. So some national championship odds for next year, some early release. Ohio State did open as the favorite at plus 450. Texas is plus 650. Oregon plus 650 also. Georgia plus 700. Penn State plus 850. Notre Dame plus 1,200. Alabama plus 1,600. Tennessee plus 1,800. Clemson plus 1,800. And LSU plus 2,000. In the way too early top 25, this is based off of ESPN. I'm just going to count from 10 to 0. 10 was South Carolina. Obviously, Lenora Sellers is coming back, which is a huge deal for them. I'm not sure that they're going to have as good of a record next year, even with him. But Sellers being back is a huge deal for them. The BYU is back for BYU. Jake Retzlaff. The offense, pretty much the whole offense comes back. It's going to be another fun, exciting year for them. Obviously, they're going to be contending with Arizona State and all the other Big 12 teams. But BYU bringing back pretty much that entire offense is a huge deal. They're loaded. I think they're going to be another team that we're going to watch out for next year, potential playoff berth. Number 8 was LSU. Nussmeier's coming back. Probably be projected one of the top quarterbacks in the draft the following year, if I had to guess. They do bring back a lot of their offense again, and a lot of the key pieces on defense. Harold Perkins will be back. The cornerback Stamps will be back. So I know that they're going to be another good team, but see how the SEC, you never know how it's going to go with the loaded schedule there. 7 and 8 actually play each other to open the season next year. Number 7 is Clemson. Cade Klubnik will be back next year. Keeps progressing in the Riley Leonard offense. Or not Riley Leonard. Riley, what the hell's his name? The USC coach.
Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley. Where did I get Riley Leonard?
We just talked about him for 10 minutes.
Whatever. his name is stuck on my mind, clearly. But with Cade Klubnik back, Clemson will be probably the favorite going into the season for the ACC. LSU does open the season at Clemson in a true home game, finally, not one of the neutral site nonsense. Number 6, Oregon. Quarterback will need to be replaced. Dante Moore did transfer in from UCLA last year. He was the backup to Dylan Gabriel, so we would probably have to assume Dante Moore is going to be the quarterback. Oregon's recruiting class is absolutely ridiculous. I believe it's still the number 1 class right now. There's even talk of Chris Henry Jr. switching his commitment from Ohio State to Oregon. And that would be enormous because I don't know if you've seen clips of Chris Henry Jr., but he's an absolute monster. He's been tearing up high school. He transferred out to California to play. Was the kid of Chris Henry. Chris Henry died, obviously, and Pac-Man Jones has been his father since then. And I mean, this kid's just been he's amazing. I would encourage you to go watch clips of him in high school. Number 5 is Georgia. Gunnar Stockton will be back. Georgia, obviously, they're loaded. They just didn't perform that well this year. They do bring back most of the defense, which I think will be huge for them outside of Mikael Williams. I think Starks has gone to the safety. But for the most part, they bring back a lot of the defense. Notre Dame, we just talked about them. They are the preseason number 4 and the way too early. Jeremiah Love will be back. Jerry Price will be back. Faison will be back. Greathouse will be back. Quarterback is a question. Obviously, everyone there is excited about freshman C.J. Carr. Everyone seems to think he is going to be the starter over Angeli, but obviously we'll see what time tells with that. I think Carter and Scott, you guys would probably say Carr's the favorite if I had to guess. Is that right?
Yeah, he's definitely the favorite from everything I can tell.
By far the most physical talent on the team.
Penn State
the whole offensive line will be back too.
Well, that's a huge deal if the whole line's back.
Yeah, well, basically 7 of the guys that started all year will be back, so they should be pretty loaded again.
Number 3 is Penn State. Drew Aller will be back. Obviously, the offense had a lot of changes under Ketelnicki this year in the right direction. He did announce that he will be coming back, which I think is huge for them. They're just a team that I say it every year. We've done this. They're hard for me to trust. I don't ever feel like they're that good of a team, but we'll see. I mean, preseason number 3 is preseason number 3. Number 2 is Texas. Quinn Ewers is gone. Arch Manning will be the new quarterback. They do bring back most of the defense, so they're going to be pretty loaded on D again. That defense was very good this year. And then add on Arch being the quarterback. Wisner's back at running back. I know they lose Jahdae Bear in the corner that was really good. So that will be one thing they'll have to replace, but I'm pretty sure Texas will probably be all right when it comes to the transfer portal and bringing in one corner. And the number 1 team, Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate will both be back. Alabama transfer, Caleb Downs will be back. They do lose quite a bit. Travion Henderson, Emeka Ibuka, Will Howard. I mean, those are huge losses. Jack Sawyer's a huge loss. JTT is a huge loss. So they're losing a lot of guys. I have seen some rumblings that the D coordinator might be gone also, just like Notre Dame. So some changes coming clearly for Ohio State, but money's spent well, I'm sure, and they will reload just like they do. As you guys can see on the graphic here, we have the whole top 25 listed. Reese, what are some interesting things you see from the top 25?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to repeat as national champions as we've seen. Only Georgia and Bama have done it since 2000. Ohio State wasn't as active in the first round of the portal either, but they do have Julian Sain coming in to replace Howard. So that's something to look at. Like Texas, going to be with Arch Manning. My favorite right now is Oregon. I like what Dante Moore brings to the table. I especially like him getting paired with Dan Lanning and Will Stein. Ducks also, as to your point, have one of the top recruiting classes. They're also top 10 in transfer rankings right now. So I really like what they're looking like. The other one, we have a lot of hate on this podcast about this team, but Penn State is bringing back Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. They're bringing back their OC, who we thought potentially could be leaving for a head coaching position. He's going to return. That gives them arguably the most experienced and talented backfield in the nation. So they're going to have to figure out the passing attack, but they won a lot of games last year or this year without it, removing Tyler Warren from the equation. So we'll see what happens with that. But looking at this, I like that plus 650 on Oregon right now.
Carter, what are your thoughts?
22, 23, and 24, all Notre Dame opponents early in the season. So we start off with A&M or at Miami. Then we have A&M the following week. So nice little test there in the beginning. I'm kind of excited to see what Cignetti does in year 2. I mean, I think he proved a lot last year. They're bringing in a bunch more transfers. We'll see how he does. But, yeah, I'm already ready for it. This is getting me excited.
Before we move on to Scott and Ike, I will go over the 2025 Penn State football schedule real quick, and we'll just do a quick win-loss. I think we're going to have some pretty consensus picks here, but I see 3 losses just quickly looking at this. So they're going to open with Nevada at home. Then the airport, Florida International will be at home, and then Villanova's at home. Those are their first 3 games. I think we'll all pretty much agree 3-0 on that, right?
Yeah.
Then they have a bye before they do bring the Oregon Ducks to University Park. So Happy Valley will host Oregon on September 27th. The following week, they are going to the Rose Bowl to play UCLA. How do you think they get out of that?
But I mean, it's definitely a potential for a hangover spot.
I mean, I could see 0-2 there easily. But we'll say for the sake of it, they split 1-1. So there's 1 loss. Then they're going to return home from the Rose Bowl to face Northwestern, and then the week after that, they're going to Kinnick to face Iowa. I mean, I would think there's probably a loss there also. I mean, Ike, you're the Big Ten representative. What are your thoughts so far?
I have not looked ahead to next year at all. I'm totally winging anything you ask me about college football at this point.
Pleading the fifth.
All right, well, let's just put this scenario out there. Saturday, October 18th, they go to Kinnick at Iowa. Then they're off, and then they go on the road again Saturday, November 1st to face Ohio State. So,
I mean, if you're just talking traditionally, those are losses. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to play those 2 teams back to back at their place.
So they're going at Iowa, at Ohio State, coming home to face IU. So we got a tough stretch here. IU at home, obviously, is a little different. It's a home game, so that's nice. Then they're going to go at Michigan State, home against Nebraska, which should be much improved. They're at Rutgers, which, as long as they don't fall off the earth like they did at the end of last season, they should be another good team. So that was the whole schedule. Reese, what do you think? Carter, we'll come to you next. Reese, what do you got?
Okay.
Yeah, that's tough, man. They have IU coming to University Park?
Yeah, they're at Iowa, bye at Ohio State, and then IU comes to them.
Okay. The Iowa game doesn't concern me as much as it concerns you, but again, that could be a potential for a hangover. UCLA game doesn't really concern me. Oregon game I can see being a loss. I mean, maybe Penn State walks into a situation where their 2 losses are to Ohio State and Oregon. They have 2 losses. They bypass the conference championship, and then they get into the playoff anyway. I mean,
yeah, that's part of the problem with.
Yeah, we saw that a lot this year. So,
right.
Yeah, I think a 2-loss Penn State team does still have a chance to be able to sneak into the playoffs. The timing on those losses is going to have somewhat of an impact on it, but if they lose to Iowa, I mean, which is possible. Kinnick is not an easy place to play. I think that's going to be a ding on their resume, so that could keep them out. But
yeah, I mean, I think the concern games are Oregon, at Iowa, at Ohio State, IU, Nebraska, and then that last game, even at Rutgers, I'm throwing as a potential loss. Carter, what were you going to say?
I was just going to mention they have a bye before Oregon, and they're going to have Oregon at home, which I think definitely helps. And then they get that bye before Ohio State. So that could help them out. And, I mean, you're really hoping, if you're a Penn State fan, that Drew Aller takes that next step forward like everyone kind of predicts. And if he does with that backfield, they're going to have to get some receivers out of the portal probably. But they could have a pretty potent offense. So those buys, I think, make it a little bit more favorable for them.
Well, I mean, I think it's a very favorable schedule anyway. The first 3 weeks are essentially a bye, and they're all at home. Then they're bye, and then they play Oregon in week 5, and still wouldn't have even left College Park. Like, they don't even leave. So them going to the Rose Bowl is their first true road game, and that's October 4th. That's kind of insane. So, yeah, I definitely could see, just looking at this schedule quickly, though, I could see 3 or more losses. But I think you're right. If they do lose 2, they're definitely in, and probably not even playing in the conference championship game. But
yeah, if they lost their last loss at Ohio State in November 1st with 4 more games left and they went out.
They're definitely in. Sure. Yeah, if that's their last loss. Yeah.
All right, Reese, go to the next one. All right, so just a little sneak peek here before we end our college football time here. These are some season openers for next year. I think Farmageddon is the only one that's week 0. I believe all of the other ones are week 1. So a potential number 1 versus number 2 to start the year is Texas is going to Ohio State. Ohio State is a 4.5-point favorite. That's going to be one hell of a game to open the season in Columbus. Notre Dame is going to go to Miami. Notre Dame is 2.5 point favorite. Unfortunately, they do cap these game of the year lines with the betting limit because I think the world should be put on that right now. I don't care who Notre Dame's quarterback is. They are going to blow that team out because Carson Beck is not going to be able to do anything at Miami. LSU is going to Clemson. Clemson's a 2.5 point favorite at home. You can call it the Battle of Death Valley if you want, but I will never refer to Clemson as Death Valley. There's only one of those, and it's in Baton Rouge. Farmageddon, Iowa State versus Kansas State. This game's in Dublin. Kansas State is a 2.5 point favorite. Alabama is going to open on the road at Florida State. Our stadium is supposed to be done for this game with all the renovations. I'm not sure this is going to be the way we want to open it, but Alabama is an 8.5 point favorite. Syracuse versus Tennessee is going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Tennessee is a 13.5 point favorite. Georgia Tech is a 4.5 point favorite on the road at Colorado. Be Deion's first game without Shedeur and Travis Hunter. TCU is going to go to North Carolina at Chapel Hill, 2.5 point favorite for the Bill Belichick debut. Auburn is a 1.5 point favorite going to Baylor. And South Carolina is a 9.5 point favorite versus Virginia Tech. I believe that is the Labor Day night game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Scott, any thoughts on the opening games here?
I'm really curious at how South Carolina's going to come out. They went on such a high point to end the season. Around here in Columbia, anyways, they have such high hopes of being that third team in the SEC next year. So seeing what they do at that start of the season against Midland, Virginia Tech, or Vaught Tech, I think will be a good indicator of where they actually end up. I'm kind of disappointed at the week one lineup this year. Really the must-see show is the Texas Ohio State. Where that puts you at the end of the year, it's really hard to tell. You got two brand new quarterbacks, a lot of turnover there. Ohio State still got all kinds of great athletes, but they lost so much after this year's championship. In Texas, they've got so much to prove. Where do they end up in big games this year? It's a nice start, but it's kind of a disappointing schedule-wise. We're talking about Penn State, and they start off the season or the first month with basically a bye.
Yeah,
so I don't think that's going to do much for them. And if them going for the season outlook, they've got to go cross country to play UCLA. Indiana, I think Michigan State's going to be much better this year with the second year head coach that nobody's talking about.
Yeah,
Iowa's always tough. They're fundamentally sound, not the greatest athletes. So Penn State could be looking up at the second week of November with 4, maybe even 5 losses. The schedule this year is basically a turnaround from where it was last year. So Penn State might have some good parts of their picture. But I wouldn't really count on them being in next year. It'll be just another spot open for somebody else.
Ike, I know you're not as into next season already, but from an outsider's perspective, which of these games if you could watch 2 of these games, which 2 are you picking?
Yeah, I was going to say, take the pressure off of him a little bit.
Well, if I have to pick number one's Belichick. I'm very interested to see how he does at the college level. Whether he can get the players to buy in, if he can relate to the players. It's not something he's really had to do in the past. And I kind of feel like, I don't know, if that line's opening at 2.5, I feel like the public, they feel the public's going to be on Belichick. So maybe TCU is a little bit better than advertised. So that one's going to be fun. And then, number 1 versus number 2 to open the season. How can you not have that as the other? I think if they play rematch in the championship or in the playoffs, it will be a totally different game than the season opener. All these teams with their NIL transfers and whatever, like it takes teams time to gel. Like you got so many first-year guys playing together, first-year systems. Week one's where the upsets are more likely to happen, and where the finished product's not necessarily there. So I won't put a ton of stock into who wins that game, but it obviously would be a good thing for them.
Yeah, right.
But,
Carter, what are your? Oh, sorry. If you can finish.
Yeah, no, that's it. Those are the 2 I would say I'm most excited about, and Deion being an underdog. I'd love to see him get hammered by 30 to open the season. But that's
I I think that might happen. But Carter,
if you really want that, he should go to Dallas.
Carter, what are your thoughts on the week 0/1 of next year?
I mean, it's so early to tell. I think you're going to have spring ball. There's going to be another round of transfer portal additions. So all these lines are going to move. Like Ike said, North Carolina being favored first. I mean, I don't know what's up with that. Like you said, it's probably thinking the public's going to be on Bill. Yeah, I'm excited to see what Notre Dame does at Miami. It's been kind of a house of horrors for us in the past. So, but yeah, I'm sure we'll mess up Carson Beck pretty good.
Well, that is also the site of the national championship next year is Hard Rock Stadium.
Yeah. Start the season there and end the season there is the goal for Notre Dame. So, but yeah.
Reese, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't want to parrot a lot of what everybody said. A lot of these games look really good. I am interested in seeing what Bill Belichick's going to be able to do at UNC. I have a question for you, though, because we really didn't have a chance to talk about this team. Obviously, there were some pretty high hopes for Florida State going into the season last year. You guys brought in new offensive and defensive coordinators. They're sitting outside the top 25 right now. But, I mean, overall, what are your thoughts going into the offseason with Florida State and how they look?
Well, I've stated a few weeks ago that I'm not going to get too excited about the portal anymore, but they've had very good success in the portal again. They've done good things. I've liked the offseason, actually. I like Gus Malzahn coming in. I think it's going to be a nice change for our offense. Obviously, I'm very much looking forward to the new quarterback situation. I think Castellanos, the transfer from Boston College, will be our starting quarterback, and obviously will bring much-needed excitement, more of a Jordan Travis type look with his running ability. The dude can run all over the field, which is something we really haven't had in a while. It just depends. It's hard to get excited knowing that we're playing Bama week 1. Last time we played Bama, the first game of the year, pretty much ended about 3 years in a row of our team's hopes. So it was demoralizing. We played them in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It was one of those game of the century. All the commercials for 2 months was leading up to that game, and they just absolutely murdered us. And that was right after that's when Jimbo left and things hit the fan. I will say I'm excited for Florida State, though. I like the changes, but I'm not going to be as excited as I once was with just what the offseason brings. Obviously, there's more to it than that. With these games, LSU and Clemson, no one really mentioned this. I think LSU and Clemson is quietly probably the best game on this board. I think we're going to find out a lot about these two teams. I think these are two teams that easily could win the title next year. Obviously, Brian Kelly is the coach of one of them, so that takes their chances a little bit down. But LSU at Clemson on a real site in Clemson, I just feel like that's going to be probably the most fun to watch on that opening weekend. Anyone else have anything else on college preview before we switch to NFL?
Yeah, I saw that comment from someone, Al Golden, going to Cincinnati Bengals.
Brett Clark has gave us a message that Al Golden is to the Bengals, which we did reference a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think they have the replacement on the staff already. Mike Mickens is the secondary pass game coordinator. Excellent recruiter. They're probably going to promote him as DC, I would imagine, then hire someone to fill in behind him. So, breaking news on this podcast. That's my call.
All right. Well, let's move into NFL. We'll recap first quickly the results from last week. Jake is the winner from last week. He went 3-1. Scott Carter and Ike all finished out at 2-2. I went 1-3. It's not been a great playoff for me, betting with my heart instead of my head. Let's recap the games here. We'll start off with the Chiefs game. Chiefs kicked off the divisional round matchups with a 9-point victory as they defeated the Texans 23-14 Saturday afternoon at Arrowhead. Despite C.J. Stroud passing for 245 yards, the Texans struggled with turnovers and special teams errors, including a missed extra point and a blocked field goal attempt. The franchise remains winless in divisional round games. Patrick Mahomes threw for 177 and a touchdown, improving to 16-3 in the postseason and tying Joe Montana for second most playoff wins by a starting quarterback in NFL history. Travis Kelce proved to be a key contributor. He had 7 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. The win marks the Chiefs' 7th straight consecutive appearance in the AFC Championship, and a historic one at that, as they are one of only 4 teams to make it to the conference title game after winning back-to-back Super Bowls. Also, a milestone victory for Andy Reid, who reached his 300th career win. The Texans are heading home. Chiefs are staying at home as they await the Buffalo Bills. Let's open it up with Ike, our resident Chiefaholic.
Yeah, I said last week I didn't see what the Texans could bring to the table to even hang with the Chiefs, and they proved me wrong. They executed their game plan well. They actually were able to run the ball. Mixon had a good game. Collins had an okay game. They limited the turnovers, no turnovers. Other than the missed kicks, they played pretty much their perfect game, I would say. But, playoff Kelsey and the Chiefs are just a different beast. They've been there. There's nothing they haven't seen. There's no place they haven't been. They don't get rattled when things don't go their way. If you ask Houston, we had a little home cooking with the officials, which there's a couple questionable calls, but those happen in every game. Ultimately, I think the Texans showed that they belong there, but that they're not quite at the level of the Chiefs or the Bills or the other teams remaining.
Yeah, a little challenging for the Texans as well because they're dealing with some pretty significant injuries, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
That's true. That's half the game at this point of the season.
Yeah, for sure. Carter, what were your thoughts on the game?
It went down about like I thought. I thought the Texans' defense could kind of keep them in it. That offensive line, they gave up 8 sacks. Stroud did all right. They're just missing weapons. If they had Tank Dell, I think maybe things would be different. Diggs and Dell would have helped him. And then, playoff Kelsey's just a beast as usual. So,
Scott?
Yeah, I think Texas, their offensive line really needs to be looked at, maybe wholesale changes and improvements. They've got the weapons once they get healthy again. We're assuming that Tank Dell comes back. The injury that he had, there's some of those that just they ride off into the sunset and they're never the same again. That'd be a shame because he's been such a dynamic player for them. The outcome of the game, doesn't surprise me at all. I just worry about the Texans culture after watching the players shove the assistant coach and the head coach just basically saying no big deal. That makes me really wonder what goes on inside that locker room and what's an acceptable behavior versus accountable to the team, to the coaches, and the like.
Jake, you got anything before we jump into this next one that you're going to need some energy for?
Not really, other than I don't know how anyone's ever going to beat a team that has Caitlin Clark, Taylor Swift, and the Rizzler. That's just completely unfair. I don't understand how. I think the season's over at this point.
Plus, you forgot the man, the super fan right here. Add me to the list.
I thought that's who the Rizzler was.
When I saw the Rizzler do his pregame video from Arrowhead on the sidelines, I knew it was over. The whole thing's over.
Yeah, I thought Ike was the Rizzler. I thought that's what was going on.
It's my illegitimate child.
All right, let's keep it moving here. The Commanders, unfortunately for Jake, pulled off an upset as they defeated the Detroit Lions 45-31 in Ford Field Saturday night and advanced to their first NFC Championship matchup in 33 years. Commanders went into halftime up 31-21 off a 28-point second quarter, 242 passing yards from rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, and Detroit was never able to find the lead in the second half. Washington's defense created all kinds of chaos, forcing 5 turnovers in the game, including a forced fumble and 3 interceptions off of Lions quarterback Jared Goff, who finished 23 of 40 for 313 and a score, along with the 3 picks. Jaden Daniels finished 22 of 31 for 299 and 2 touchdowns on top of 16 carries for 51 yards. Brian Robinson Jr. was also effective for Washington, finishing with 15 carries for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. Detroit's bright spot in the game was Jahmyr Gibbs. He finished with 14 carries for 105 and 2 scores to go along with 6 catches for another 70 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown led the team in receiving yet again, compiling 8 catches for 137. But overall, a combination of turnovers, defensive miscues, and injuries just proved too much for Detroit to overcome. Lions season, unfortunately, comes to an end while the Commanders pack up and head to Philly for an NFC East showdown for the NFC title. Jake? Hand it off to you, man. What are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, so we've talked about injuries a lot. I mean, I'm not blaming injuries, but early in the game, we lost to Meek Robinson. That's a huge loss. Like, it sucks. Like, the injuries never stopped. I literally felt like they never stopped this year. Meek got hurt. The defense, we had to bring Vildor in. Vildor actually didn't play terrible, but and obviously I'm not going to complain too much about what the coaches did, but Aaron Glenn never changing in that game, I feel like killed us. And Ben Johnson, there were a few decisions he made that I think were pretty crucial. We had a 3rd down and 1 early in the game. We could have scored to go up 14-3, and we threw a pass. And on the pass, there was a strip sack fumble recovery by Washington. The Lions, we could be in 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 11 or 3rd and 7, and we ran the ball this year. Like, we showed people we will run the ball because we're going to go for it on 4th down anyway. So when we decided to throw a pass on 3rd and 1 from the red zone, I was questioning that. I mean, Ben Johnson's Ben Johnson. I'm giving him all the credit in the world. Like, I'm never going to say a bad thing about him, but that was a terrible decision, and one that ultimately I think might have cost us the game early. We actually held them to 3, which was the only time we did it the whole game. To go up 14-3 in that game in a high-scoring shootout is a huge deal. Yeah. The turnover swung. We ended up being down 10-7 instead of up 14-3, and pretty much it went from there. No adjustments on defense. Goff was playing horrendous. At halftime, I'd pretty much given up. When Goff went out for the concussion check and Teddy Bridgewater came in and J-Mo hit the reverse for a touchdown, I thought, oh, well, maybe we have life, because I knew Goff was coming back. But no, never successfully stopped him on defense. And Goff, there's a reason why I'm not a huge Goff fan, and it kind of was that. I mean, I know he's had a good year, but this is almost the same thing that happened when he was with the Rams. Like, he was good, but he never could get him over that hump. And we saw what Stafford went in and did in 1 year. I'm almost at that point with Goff now. Like, I truly feel like without Ben Johnson, Goff is going to be a completely different player, and I'm really worried about what his results are going to be.
Carter, what were your thoughts on the game?
Man, I feel for you, Jake. Sucks to have a team that good and then just get one playoff game at home. That crowd was absolutely wild in Detroit. Sucks for all those fans. But, man, that Jaden Daniels, ice in his veins with such a raucous crowd. He played pretty amazing. The turnovers were the key in this game. You can go back and second-guess some of the Ben Johnson stuff. That Jameson Williams pass, I think a lot of people were talking about that.
Yeah.
But just too many turnovers. You shot yourself in the foot too many times, and Commanders seized every opportunity they could.
Scott?
Yeah, I was really surprised with how well Washington played, especially in that atmosphere. Yeah, like you said, that there was this raucous. I don't even think that gives it the due that it deserves. It just seemed like an insane crowd. The noise, the electricity in the building. The score, really surprised that Washington was able to score like they were. Detroit didn't quit, which was really a tribute to them. I don't know where Washington's season ends, but they really surprised me with that game, and I look at them in a different way going into next week or this week.
Ike?
Yeah, Jaden Daniels just a stone cold killer, man. He's just, like Carter said, ice in the veins. It's crazy how confident, the swagger, the poise that guy has at such a young age. I think the Lions, I mean, it's hard to, like you said, it's hard to question the play calling. I don't blame Ben Johnson for the reverse pass. J-Mo's got to know he can't squeeze at him. If it's not there, take off or throw it away. He has to be smarter than that. I think only 14 carries for Gibbs is probably on the low side. Maybe even the regular season you can give him 14 and spell him, but in a playoff game, it's win or go home. That guy should be getting 25 carries. I mean, the injuries piled up. I mean, it just goes to show how hard it is to win in the NFL, I guess. when you're the Lions.
Well, and Jake, you even made that point last week when we were talking about this because, Knuckles was back for this game. And to your point, you're like, I'm glad that he's back on the team because he does make an impact, but you were satisfied with having Gibbs there in isolation. So I don't know that David Montgomery pulled too many carries away from him. I mean, they seem to try to get Jahmyr Gibbs the ball quite a bit, but to your point, they kind of evaded the run in certain situations and try to get him the ball through the air. I just, to same concept like we talked about with Notre Dame. I think it was just a combination of things, but injuries stacked up, and that had to have taken some gas out of Detroit when Amir went down that early in the game, and then Goff with the concussion. It seems like everything's working against you at that point. All right. The Eagles outlasted the Rams in the snow as they got the victory 28-22 over LA Sunday afternoon. Saquon Barkley continues giving Giants fans nightmares for letting him walk as he rushed for 205 yards and 2 scores, becoming the first player to record 3 60-plus yard touchdowns against a team in a season since Jamal Lewis did it in 2003. Jalen Hurts rushed for a 44-yard touchdown, but otherwise struggled in the passing game. He did finish 15 for 20, but he only had 128 yards, got sacked 7 times, and he ended up playing with a knee brace in the second half after taking a hit, which is something to watch out for in this week's upcoming matchup. The Rams' upset bid was kind of bungled due to multiple turnovers, including a fumble by Kyron Williams and a strip sack of Matthew Stafford, which led to a field goal for the Eagles. Stafford did throw for 324 yards and a 4-yard touchdown pass, but the Rams just could not convert in the final minutes. A sack by Jalen Carter sealed the win for Philly, who sends LA home while they await a battle with the red-hot Washington Commanders on Sunday. Scott, what were your thoughts on the Eagles-Rams matchup?
Yeah, I was really disappointed. The Rams just in general. By the end of the game, they just seemed to be overmatched. Saquon Barkley is just killing it this year. Really impressed with how he has finished the game or the year strong with these running backs, and more games they keep piling on. 17 games now, they want to go to 18. The fact at the end of the season he's still just as strong as he was at the beginning is a tribute to him. I really like where they're headed. I just worry about the quarterback situation there. If he's injured, how bad, how much, removes his mobility. We'll just kind of see. And Washington just seems to be peaking. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Jake, what were your thoughts on the game?
I thought it was a pretty good game overall. For the weather conditions, I was surprised the Rams were still able to throw the ball as well as they were. Unfortunately, it was just too little, too late. I mean, they stayed in it. Saquon dominated like we expected him to. But, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. Football pretty much ended for me after the Lions game. I mean, I did watch this game hoping that the Rams would win, and of course they didn't, so it sucked. But obviously the news came out. When Stafford ran, he actually took off and ran on a scramble, which you almost never see him do. But he was going towards the goal line, and he did fall kind of weird, and you could tell when he went to the sideline he was holding his ribs a little bit, and then it came out that in the Week 15 game against the 49ers, he cracked 4 of his ribs. So he's been playing with 4 cracked ribs since Week 15 in must-win games pretty much every week. So, I mean, I've always said it. I think most people know it that just seen him play. That he's the toughest player in the NFL by far. But what he's able to just keep doing, it just sucks they didn't win. But the weather was a terrible situation. I do think they had a hell of a fight, though. I think they fought better than most people thought they would. And we'll see if that was the last game for Stafford.
Yeah, I hope not. That defense looks legit, though. Hopefully that keeps him around. You guys have some young talent on LA. Ike, what were your thoughts on the game?
I think the Rams did show out better than I think people expected them to. The game came down to turnovers, +2 in the favor of Philly, and that was the difference. I said going into last week, I think Philly's probably the most complete team in the playoffs, and they can beat you a number of ways, and they showed one of the ways they can beat you this week, and that's with Saquon. Hurts didn't have his best game, but he didn't need to. So it's nice to have that workhorse back. Hopefully this helps give the running backs a little more respect around the league, and they start getting paid appropriately.
Carter?
Yeah, like Ike said, it seemed like all these games really, except for the Texans game, kind of come down to turnovers. I mean, you just can't beat yourself when you play such an evenly matched game. Philadelphia's offensive line is unbelievable, and then you got a back like Saquon Barkley. They're going to be really tough to beat, especially if they get a lead. And with that defense, I'd keep feeding Saquon. We'll see if Hurts, I think, missed practice today, so we'll see how he's doing. But
yeah, he did miss practice.
I got to say something about Stafford, man. Playing with, I didn't hear, no one knew about the cracked rib thing. Unbelievable. And I think he'll come back. They got a lot of talent there still. They got to figure out what they're going to do with Kupp. But all those defensive players are pretty young, and I think they're only going to get better.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on Cooper Kupp because some of the stuff I was reading today seems like he's already got one foot out the door, but they do have some talent there with Puka Nacua, and obviously we got free agency and the draft coming up, so we'll see how that plays out. Let's hit up the last game here. It took a couple of key mistakes on Baltimore's side for Buffalo, but the Bills got it done at home as they defeated the Ravens 27-25. Ravens dominated on the offensive side of the ball, finishing with 416 yards against Buffalo's 273. While penalties also played a part, key turnovers and mistakes turned out to be what resulted in the loss for the Ravens. Buffalo remained turnover-free in the game, while the Ravens had 3, including an interception and a fumble in the first half, and a key forced fumble by Terrell Bernard on Mark Andrews off a 16-yard pass from Lamar Jackson as Baltimore was driving down with just under 9 minutes left in the game. Final blow came on a critical 2-point conversion try as the Ravens scored with a minute and a half remaining in an open pass to Mark Andrews to the corner of the front of the end zone there to tie. Mark Andrews dropped the ball. Subsequent onside kick was recovered by the Bills' Rasul Douglas, and Buffalo was able to run out the clock. Lamar Jackson's playoff record falls to 3-5 as he finished the game completing 18 of 25 for 254 and 2 touchdowns. Ravens are flying home while the Bills pack a bag and head to the Heartland to see if they can stop the Chiefs' bid for their 5th Super Bowl appearance in the last 6 seasons. Let's kick it off with Ike. What were your thoughts on the game? And we'll be looking at another showdown between Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, I am looking forward to that. Baltimore just -3 on the turnovers. You can't beat a team like Buffalo on the road when you're -3 in the turnover margin. I think it does show how dangerous Baltimore was and why I'm glad they're out of the playoffs, that they were -3 and were still a wide open dropped 2-point conversion away from taking it to overtime. Buffalo didn't play their best game and they didn't have to. And that worries me a little bit because, you know, how often do teams come out and play 2 bad games in a row in the NFL when you're one of the best teams in the league? So I kind of wish they would have saved that poor offensive performance for next week, but hats off to them for getting it done without their A game.
Carter?
Yeah, this one kind of hurt. I put a decent bet on Baltimore, and I thought they really had a good chance. They were pretty much unstoppable all day, except for when they turned the ball over. I would have liked to see Andrews score that 2-point conversion and see what would happen in overtime.
Yeah,
because I think they could have pulled it off there. But, hats off to the Buffalo winning, like Ike said, not playing your best game and finding a way to get it done. It's kind of interesting. Ray Davis had the touchdown. I figured Cook would have a bigger game than that. But, that's going to be another good one, Mahomes and Allen.
Scott?
Yeah, I'm going a different direction here. Buffalo's running game, who would ever have thought in the past 5 years with Josh Allen there that had been Buffalo's running game that has done so much for the team, the backup running back, Cook all season, cold weather teams going into really frozen tundra kind of game. You know, that nobody was sitting on the sideline with the coat turned up and too cold to go back in. I thought that was really good. Enough mistakes made to change the outcome of the game. Mark Andrews is going to see that game in his dreams for the rest of his life. That last 2-point conversion when it was in his hands, and then it wasn't. That's just going to stay with him and burn a hole into his soul. I'm looking forward to this week's game with the, once again, 2 cold teams going at it, both on a roll and just swinging for the fences.
Jake, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, everyone pretty much already said everything. It It does suck that Andrews dropped out. I would like to have seen what happened, but I think Buffalo, they still would have had a decent amount of time. I mean, they might have even went down the field and scored there, but yeah, I mean, it was a great game. It's pretty much what you want in a divisional round game.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep it moving here. We're going to talk about head coaching updates here before we move into the conference championship matchups. If losing the divisional game for the Detroit Lions wasn't enough, the hits have kept coming over the past couple days. It appears that they are entering their own scramble to replace multiple coaches on Dan Campbell's staff, starting with the biggest announcement. The Chicago Bears have come to an agreement with Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson for him to become the team's next head coach. It was reported that both the Jaguars and Raiders were in contention to sign Johnson, but it was Chi-Town that got the most coveted coach in this year's coaching carousel. In addition to Ben Johnson leaving, the New York Jets have come to an agreement with Detroit's defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, with rumors that Glenn plans on bringing along Lions' current quarterback coach, Mark Brunell, as his offensive coordinator. And if that wasn't enough, the Patriots have also been plucking from the Dan Campbell trees. It was announced that Mike Vrabel has tapped Detroit's D-line coach, Terrell Williams, as his defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. Perhaps not as surprising in that one, as Williams did spend 6 seasons with the Titans, where Mike Vrabel most recently coached. Jake, I'm going to throw it here to you first, man. Where do the Lions go from here?
Well, we've still got to watch to see if we lose Fraley, our offensive line coach. He's rumored to be offensive coordinator candidate for Seattle, so hopefully we don't lose him also. For Aaron Glenn, I'll say thank you for the 3rd round pick. That's pretty much what it is. I've never been that huge on Aaron Glenn. I appreciate the style he plays, but I don't appreciate the style he plays when our whole team is hurt and we need to adjust. But it worked, so we'll see. I don't see much success for him in New York, but we'll wait and see. It's going to be tough for anyone to win there anyway. Ben, I think it's been, 4 or 5 weeks ago, we were kind of talking about where would you go if you were Ben Johnson. I said Chicago. I think the situation's perfect for him there. They have money to spend. They have I think the 10th pick in the draft. We'll see what they bring in free agency. Obviously, their offensive line is nowhere near what he had in Detroit, so that's going to be problem number one for him, I think. And then the defense is still going to need a little bit of help. So obviously, they have things to build there, but I think the pairing of him and Caleb Williams is huge. I'm a big fan of that combination, so obviously I will be supporting them. I clearly won't be rooting for them, but with Caleb, Ben, and Rome Odunze, I mean, there's a lot of things I like in Chicago. Losing Fraley, the offensive line coach, if that ends up happening, that's a huge deal. I think Kelvin Shepard is going to be our new defensive coordinator, hire from within. I don't think we're going to lose him to anyone else, so we should be fine to hire him as DC. OC, a little bit of a situation still. We got a guy on staff that I think will probably end up taking it, but again, we got to see who ends up going where. But I think we'll be safe to keep those two. There's even some outside chances. Like if I'm Dan Campbell, I think I'd be throwing a lot of money and trying to get Robert Saleh to come be our defensive coordinator. I think that would be a huge addition for the style that we play. And I trust more of what he does as opposed to the man-to-man blitzing defense every play. But Saleh's probably going to get a head coaching job still, I would assume. But if not, I hope that we're one of the teams that throw a ton of money at him for DC.
Yeah, it'd be a helpful pickup if he ends up as a defensive coordinator. All right, let's keep it moving here in the interest of time. We do have multiple other coordinators that have been hired since last week as well. The Indianapolis Colts have hired former Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo as their next DC. Obviously, we've got a couple Colts fans on here. Carter, what were your thoughts on the hire of Big Lou?
That's kind of who I was hoping they would target. We'll see. I think we're going to have a little bit more talent on defense than what he had in Cincinnati. I mean, it was Hendrickson, and that was about it. But they love blitzing the nickelback. So Kenny Moore is going to probably love it. And I just think he's brings more variety than what Gus Bradley had. So we'll see. And they always did pretty good against Kansas City in the playoffs.
Scott, what are your thoughts on the hire?
Until they upgrade the talent on the defense, they've got great line, but they've invested number one draft picks all across that front four and outside of Buckner. They have not lived up to the hype. The secondary has been going downhill all season. Kenny Moore is great a couple weeks ago, I said he was the one to keep before they brought in. He was a great blitzer off the edge. I think coordinator matters less until they do something about the talent.
All right. Well, let's cover a couple more coordinator hires here really quickly. Atlanta Falcons have hired former Jets interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich as their new DC. Tennessee Titans have stolen longtime Cowboys special teams coordinator John Bones Fassel as their next special teams coordinator. And we talked about this a little bit ago at the top of the show with the college stuff, but Notre Dame's Al Golden is also leaving Notre Dame to return to Cincinnati to replace Big Lou as the team's defensive coordinator. Golden was the team's linebacker coach under current head coach Zach Taylor in 2020 and 2021 when the team reached Super Bowl 56. We do still have multiple head coaching positions that are open. For Jacksonville, one popular name in the coaching carousel has bowed out as we're talking right now anyway. Liam Cohen, who is a hot name for the position for Jacksonville, has announced that he's withdrawing his name from consideration. And it looks like he is signing a new contract with the Tampa Bay Bucks to become one of the highest paid coordinators in the league. News has come out since then, though, that the Jacksonville Jaguars have fired GM Trent Baalke, and rumors are that the Jags are going to try to make another run at Cohen, as many believe that Baalke is one of the main reasons why a lot of coaches were not interested in going to Jacksonville. So we'll see what happens with that. The Las Vegas Raiders also continue their coaching search. Rumors are that they are currently eyeing former Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll for the position after missing out on the Ben Johnson sweepstakes. New Orleans Saints head coaching search has been a little perplexing. They've rescheduled their round of in-person interviews to later in the week due to bad weather in the Southeast. Many believe that the decision all but eliminated any possible chance of bringing Aaron Glenn in, and it's also delayed their discussions with Mike Kafka and Anthony Weaver. Opening up to the floor here, I'm a little confused on this because I feel like the Saints obviously are seeing that the hammer's dropping with all of these big name head coaches. If you can't get the guys to fly in, go fly to them. I just don't understand the approach here. Instead of scheduling this to later in the week, why would you not go out and try to meet a Mike Kafka or an Aaron Glenn for that matter? Carter, what are your thoughts, or Jake?
I was just going to say, I think there's two big issues with what you just said. One, the way Jacksonville has handled everything is a complete disaster and says a lot about their franchise. Obviously, they're doing things in the most ass-backwards way possible. Costing themselves a coach potentially because they kept a GM and firing after the other coach basically said no. Clearly, they don't know what they're doing. I think it speaks a lot to the two biggest offensive coaches, Cohen and Ben Johnson, aren't wanting to go play with Trevor Lawrence also. I think that says a lot. And the other thing that I think says a lot is Aaron Glenn not even giving New Orleans a chance, really. I mean, that's where he came from. Other than the Jets, New Orleans is like his second home. And the fact that he doesn't even care to even give them time, those two things speak a lot of volumes to me. I think Jacksonville and New Orleans might be in some real interesting situations by the time this thing ends.
Carter, what are your thoughts on what's been going on in Jacksonville and New Orleans?
Yeah, that's really crazy that no one wants to work with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, when we were talking a few weeks back of the favorite jobs, I think Chicago was my one, and then Jacksonville would have been two, but with the way they run that organization, obviously no one wanted to work with Baalke. So, yeah, they're just screwing it up. And, yeah, I haven't really paid too much attention to the New Orleans stuff. I'm sure they're eyeing one of these coordinators still alive in the playoffs maybe.
Ike or Scott, you guys got anything on the Jacksonville or the New Orleans hires? Or non-hires, I should say?
I think New Orleans, their lack of a long-term quarterback – equals long-term success. If you don't have that worked out, it's a whole lot less of a job that somebody might want. So I wouldn't go there. And I wonder for Jacksonville whether it's Baalke or Trevor Lawrence that people are not willing to jump into. And I don't have an answer to that. I just would think it'd be one or the other.
Ike, any thoughts?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Dynamite drop in money.
You guys, hey, it's better just to say no than ramble off something that doesn't make any sense.
No, I appreciate that. We do need to get a little Bob Uecker recording on here, though, for future reference there, Jake.
We used to have it, but I used to have the Dynamite drop in money, but it's not here anymore. I guess for the sake of Major League and Bob Uecker.
These guys don't look too fucking good.
Yeah, speaking of that quote, let's talk about the circus show in Dallas. Rumors came out last night that Jerry E. Jones is, quote, notably considering current offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer as their next head coach. Son of longtime NFL coach Marty Schottenheimer, Brian's got 14 years of coordinator experience, but he's never been a head coach. He's operated as the Cowboys offensive coordinator for the past 2 seasons, but it is important to note that he has not been acting play caller. That has been head coach or former head coach Mike McCarthy. Team has completed interviews or discussions with several of the candidates. We've talked about those: Leslie Frazier, Kellen Moore, Robert Salah, Jason Witten, Deion Sanders. They've also shown some interest in a couple coaches on the Commanders squad with Cliff Kingsbury and Anthony Lynn, although neither of those can be interviewed until the Commanders season comes to a close. There seems to be a lot of caveats in place for the Cowboys coaching job, which undoubtedly is hurting the team's chances at landing a bigger name. It's been rumored Jerry has brought up in discussions that he is potentially interested in retaining both Schottenheimer and DC Mike Zimmer. He's also interested in plugging in former tight end Jason Witten into the coaching staff in some capacity. That last name is of importance as Jerry's publicly been very high on Jason Witten, and he's even gone as far as to wish Witten would have been brought in under Mike McCarthy as a head coach in waiting, which very well could be one of the reasons why Big Mike decided to leave. I've had conversations with each of you offline about this. I talked with Taxis a lot about it. I just want to read off some information here about Brian Schottenheimer. He has, to the note that I just said here, over 14 years of coordinator experience. Jets offensive coordinator from 06 to 11. The team's offense and scoring finished 18th, 17th, 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 17th. Then he went to the Rams. Thank you. And be prepared to play that a couple more times. Then he went to the Rams in 12, 13, and 14. He finished 24th in all 3 seasons there. Then he moved to Georgia, where he was offensive coordinator for 1 year. Georgia finished 38th in the country in offense.
That's not terrible, but we'll still.
It's Georgia, so I expect a little bit more. They should
be top 25. Yeah.
Yes. Then two QB coaching years in Indianapolis. I'm not even going to cover that. Then he goes to Seattle, where again he's the offensive coordinator. 28th, 28th, and 28th from years 2018 to 2020. And then in 2021, he went to Jacksonville as the passing coordinator. They finished 24th in passing yards, 32nd in passing touchdowns, and 30th in passer rating. Why? I don't understand it. We talked last week and the week before last. I wasn't a huge fan of bringing in Deion because I think there's going to be a lot of distractions that come with that. I don't love giving Jason Witten any love because he has 0 coaching experience beyond the high school level. There are obviously other coaches that I was interested in with guys like Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Those guys are all gone. We have a solid potential head coach out there in Robert Salah that I think at this point we should be taking a very close look at. I think he is a leader of men. I think he can change the locker room in a lot of ways. He is going to need some support on the offensive coordinator front, but I do think that he could be a solid head coach. Other than that, none of these candidates are of huge particular interest, except for maybe Pete Carroll that Jake brought up last week, but it sounds like they're not even interested in him. How do you look at a guy like Brian Schottenheimer, who hasn't even been calling plays the past 2 years in the offensive coordinator role, and consider him heavily? And he's not gone through 1 interview. He's gone through 2. He went through his second interview today, back to back, which Jake and I were talking about off air, is likely to discuss contract details. As non-Cowboys fans, I'm throwing it back to you guys to make this make sense, because this is driving me absolutely mad. This is just another year of Dallas screwing up the offseason.
I will say before they give their input, DraftKings next Cowboys head coaching odds: Schottenheimer's minus 250, Kellen Moore plus 250, Cliff plus 350, Salah plus 450, Joe Brady plus 650, and Deion plus 750.
I think it's just as simple as Schottenheimer is one of Jerry's boys. I mean, I can't make it make sense from a trying to succeed standpoint, but Jerry wants to do what Jerry wants to do. He wants his people in there. He wants it done his way. And until he dies or moves on, Dallas just isn't going to win.
Before we get any more input, Donkey Kong, they do own the fucking North, and it's never going to end. I appreciate you. We're still the kings of the North, damn it, and it's not going to change. Thank you, Donkey Kong. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Donkey Kong, for bringing a little light to the show, because good Lord. Carter, what are your thoughts on the shit show that's going on in Dallas?
I mean, I don't know if I can really add too much to it. Like he said, it's just a Jerry Jones control thing, and I wonder if he didn't have someone like in mind for sure when he didn't extend McCarthy, and then that's kind of fallen through.
Yeah, so that's something to clarify, but not to interrupt you. That's something to clarify. It came out. Jerry Jones had no second plan. He wanted to bring Mike McCarthy back. The talks broke down between McCarthy and the Cowboys. McCarthy told the Joneses that he's not going to be coming back and that he's going to go elsewhere, and left Jerry hanging an empty bag because he had no plan beyond bringing Mike McCarthy back. He thought for sure they were going to be able to get a deal done. So that was not the Cowboys deciding to move on. That was Mike McCarthy deciding to move on.
Which is interesting because he hasn't landed anywhere.
Yeah, it tells you a whole lot. He'd rather not work.
Yep.
Go ahead, Carter.
No, yeah, it just shows you right there that he's had enough working with Jerry Jones, and he wasn't going to be under his thumb anymore, so he'll go elsewhere, and I'm sure he'll find him a job.
So, Reese, I have a question.
Saleh probably is the best bet there for you.
Yeah, I still think Saleh is too, like we talked about last week. Reese, I have a question for you then, because there's two offensive minds at the top of this list at minus 250 and plus 250. Schottenheimer's there currently. Kellen was there before. If those are your two options, which one do you want?
Kellen Moore. It's not even a question.
I would want Kellen Moore also.
Kellen Moore has ran top 5 offenses in the league. He also has a lot more experience calling plays for Dak Prescott and a lot of the guys that are on this team. It's not even 1,000% Kellen Moore. I have zero interest. Brian Schottenheimer has 2 decades of experience of mediocrity. I don't want that as a head coach. And he's not even calling plays. Like Kellen Moore, 1,000%. And I didn't want Kellen Moore back, but if it's between those two, for the love of God, give me Kellen Moore. Scott, you got anything to calm me down?
No, I was actually going to toss in the Colts when they, as the lead example for Jason Witten, when the Colts brought back in their guy to lead the team, that worked out so well. So I'm saying go Cowboys, bring in Witten and just toss him to the Wolves.
Yeah, I mean at this point, I'd rather have Witten or Jeff Saturday. I do not get this at all. Lord help me. All right, finally, before we pick the games here, it was announced last night that the Vikings and head coach Kevin O'Connell have agreed to a multi-year extension. We will keep you guys updated on the head coaching stuff as it happens, but let's jump into picks for this week. Our first matchup for the Conference Championship Sunday takes place in the NFC as the 6th seed Washington Commanders take on the 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles in an NFC East battle to decide who heads to the Super Bowl. 3 p.m. kickoff at Lincoln Financial Field on Fox. The teams split their matchups during the regular season, with the Eagles winning the Week 10 matchup in Philly 26-18, and the Commanders winning the Week 15 matchup 36-33 in Landover. That's absolutely pathetic options for the Cowboys. Donkey Kong, you are 2 for 2 on this show.
Donkey Kong's killing it.
I know he's just wrecking balls right now. Philly's strength continues to be their rushing attack, averaging 227 yards per game in the playoffs behind Saquon Barkley. Although the Ravens averaged more this year, the last team to average more than either in the playoffs was the 1974 Pittsburgh Steelers. Add in Jalen Hurts, and that creates a ground and pound attack that is difficult to stop. Their passing game, however, has been inconsistent, with only 65 net passing yards in last week's game, which is the lowest in 14 years. That's despite having some pretty solid weapons in the passing game with the likes of A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. The Commanders' strength, meanwhile, has been their rookie sensation quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who has led the Commanders to a 7-game winning streak. Not only has he been particularly deadly offensively, he's protecting the ball as well. The Eagles have thrived on pressuring opposing quarterbacks, including 7 sacks in their first 2 games and ranking 6th in total turnovers and differential during the regular season. Daniels, however, has only been sacked once so far in the playoffs and hasn't committed a turnover in the last 3 games. On the flip side, the Commanders have allowed 7.2 yards per play in the playoffs, worst among all playoff teams. They'll need to contain Jalen Hurts' mobility and, more importantly, Saquon Barkley's game-breaking runs if they plan to book a trip to New Orleans. One thing to consider for Philly is that may not be enough, though, as Detroit did just rush for 201 yards on roughly 23 carries last weekend, and Washington still won the game by 14. Over-under in this one is 47.5. Philly is favored by 6.5. Let's throw it to Ike.
I think Jalen Hurts' knee is the big story. I think there's zero doubt that he's going to play. I think that the big factor is how much will it affect his ability to scramble. That's a big deal. That's his wild card. That's what puts them above other teams. Is that he can beat you with his feet as well as throwing the ball. He's not the best passer. He's the worst passer left in the playoffs. He's probably the worst quarterback left in the playoffs, but he's not the worst football player leading the team left in the playoffs. He's a darn good football player, but if you take away his legs, he's an average quarterback at best. Like I said, they can beat you a number of ways, but if you eliminate that one, you can key in on Saquon and make him beat you with his arm, and I just don't know if he can do it with the confidence and the swagger that Washington's coming in with right now. So give me Washington, definitely with the points, and I think I'll take Washington for the upset.
All right, Scott, who you got?
Well, he took my fire, so we'll just have to go. I like Washington; they're the hottest team right now. Yeah, if you let Philadelphia get their yards on the ground and still outscore them, who would have thought just a couple years ago that Washington would have had the means offensively to do that? You would all have been shocked. But I really like where Washington's at this year, and I'm going to go with them for the upset.
Carter.
Man, I think Philadelphia has the best roster in football left. I love the way they're built in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, team. The Hurts injury is concerning. I think I'm going to make a switch here, though. I'm not going to follow this train. Give me the Eagles to win and cover. I was going to do the Commanders to cover, but since the guys went that way, I'm going to zig when they zag. So give me Eagles minus 6.5.
Jake.
Yeah, so looking at weather, it's supposed to be 44, 10 to 15 mile an hour wind, no real rain, nothing really concerning here. To me, that favors Washington, in my opinion. I just think Philly's seen this team obviously twice. Daniels isn't a surprise to them at this point. I think Philly wins the game. I will give Washington a cover, but I do think Philly will win the game and go to the Super Bowl. And this might be the last time I get to say this because it's been quite a while now, but my team, my Florida State team, got screwed out of the playoffs. The very first game of the year was against LSU and Jaden Daniels. I was at the game in person and watched us just completely manhandle him with a great defense. I think Philly has a defense like that can manhandle them. They actually have 2 of the Florida State guys from that defense on their team. So I think it'll be a similar thing. I think Philly's defense wins this game. I do not think it gets to 47.5, though. I think we're looking at an under here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually think that we have the potential to make it in the over, just over. But I think this game is going to come down to red zone execution in the turnover battle. Philly definitely has an edge on the defensive side of the ball. But 2 of Daniel's biggest contributions are his big playability and consistency in protecting the ball. And I think the Commanders are going to have to probably score 27 at least in order to win this. If they land under that number, I'm guessing they're probably going to lose. Either way, I think this game is probably going to be close. I'm going to take Washington to cover. I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I am going to take the 6.5. Our second conference championship game will feel familiar as the number 2 Buffalo Bills battle the number 1 Kansas City Chiefs for AFC supremacy and a Super Bowl berth. 6:30 p.m. kickoff at Arrowhead Stadium on CBS. Buffalo gave Kansas City their only true loss of the season this year, notwithstanding the last game of the season against Denver where they sat everyone. They defeated the Chiefs 30-21 in Buffalo week 10 and snapped the Chiefs' 9-game winning streak. Kansas City's X factor continues to be Patrick Mahomes, who has led Kansas City to 16 consecutive one-score game victories. Mahomes is particularly effective when it matters. He has a 98.2 passer rating in the fourth quarter and overtime during the regular season. But in the playoffs, he gets even better. His passer rating jumps up to 108.6, highlighting his ability to perform under pressure. The Chiefs are equally tough on the defensive side of the ball as they've allowed just over 19 a game, good for fourth in the league, and they own the number one scoring and total defense in the league since the start of the 2023 season. Their defensive squad also seems to step it up in the playoffs, something we saw in last week's matchup against the Texans, where they sacked C.J. Stroud 8 times and held the Texans to just 14 points. On the flip side, Buffalo has had one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL this season, with Josh Allen finishing with 42 total touchdowns on the year, joining Aaron Rodgers as the only player with 40 or more total touchdowns in at least 5 NFL seasons. James Cook, we talked about earlier, is another bright spot, contributing over 1,000 yards and 16 rushing touchdowns, tied for a league high. Buffalo also excels at moving the ball around, having a league high 8 players with multiple touchdown passes or multiple touchdowns in 2024. The struggle has been on the defensive side of the ball, as Buffalo struggled against playoff teams this year, going 2-3 and have given up an average of 33 a game. Josh Allen has faced Patrick Mahomes 3 times in his career in the playoffs, and so far he is 0-3. Is he going to break the streak, or is this going to be number 4? Let's kick it off with Scott. Over under 47.5. KC is favored by 1.5.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be an over game. Like I said earlier, both of them are cold weather teams, so that's not going to bother them. I think Buffalo is hotter. That could be just a difference in degrees. But Kansas City, Buffalo, great game. Talent across the board for both teams. Really good. I like this game. Looking forward to this game. But I think Buffalo's going to win it in a close shootout.
Carter.
Yeah, the Chiefs fatigue is definitely real in the playoffs. Get kind of sick of it, but I'm not betting against Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and this team at home. I think they win and cover.
Jake?
So weather 21 degrees, barely any wind, pretty much what you want on a Sunday night. I'll take the Chiefs minus 1.5. At home, I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter where they're at. I'm taking the Chiefs if it's a playoff Chiefs team. 1.5 to me, they basically just win the game. I don't think it's going to come down to a 1-point game. They've seemed to own Buffalo in the playoffs, so I think more of that continues. If anything, I think it helps that they saw them already once this season. So I'm on the Chiefs, and I'll even say I think this is a comfortable win. I think they win by more than one possession, by more than 7.
Ike.
Yeah, I think Jalen Watson is going to be the difference in this game. I think he's the biggest missing piece from that Week 10 matchup. I say the way that to beat the Chiefs is with your tight end and your number 2, number 3 receivers, and Buffalo lacks a true number 1, so they spread the ball around enough that they have the recipe to win with that. But Watson completely changes how this defense plays. And I think a lot of those 8 sacks from last week can be, attributed to coverage. Spags sends pressure from every direction, and we've got the guys out back to allow him to do it. 47.5 is interesting. I think if it gets that high, Buffalo may win the game. I think it's probably going to be a 24-18, 24-20-ish type Chiefs win. The defense is going to grind it out, and Pat's going to be Pat. Playoff Kelsey's going to be playoff Kelsey, and I'm looking forward to seeing Jaden Daniels versus Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, my concern for Buffalo here is that they got out of last week's matchup against Baltimore due to a 3 turnover differential and a couple miscues that happened by Baltimore. They're not going to be able to count on KC to make those same mistakes because, frankly, it's just extremely unlikely to happen. In addition, we've seen a lot this season that KC seems to get some favorable calls from time to time. It's possible that's going to happen here again if you put that into play. KC's been a dynasty the past 3 years, and I just don't think Buffalo is going to be able to overcome a more balanced team, and particularly a defensive team in KC. So I am also going to take the Chiefs here to win and cover. And I'm with Jake. I don't think this is going to be a one-possession game. It may happen later in the fourth quarter, but I think that KC is probably going to get maybe a 21-10 win. Maybe a little bit higher than that, but I don't see this being a one-possession game. All right. We've only got 2 for you guys this week, so that is it for us. Just a quick note on next week. Obviously, we've got the Pro Bowl stuff going on. We don't have any more college games to pick, unfortunately. We're going to do a little recap, Jake and I, on what our playoff picks were for both the NFL and the NCAA. We might cover some transfer portal stuff. Obviously, the head coaching carousel stuff is going to come out, and there'll probably be some movement there. And we make it a little Jake quiz to come back from last season. So Jake's going to have to prepare for that.
Just what we need.
That is it for us. We'll see if we can also get another JMO clip or Jameis clip in the intro for you guys next week. Worst case scenario, we can always go back to selling crab legs for whatever that business is that we have no affiliation with.
Fulton.
A brilliant marketing strategy.
Fulton, there you go. Fulton Fish Market.
I'm on it.
Yes, appreciate that, Carter. That's why we bring you on all the time, buddy. But for Ike Carter, the disappointed ninja, and my co-host Jacob Workman, this is Reese Downing, TNT Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NFL and NCAA edition. That's it for us, guys. Jake, you got anything?
I think we're just going to go out with a clip. I'll end it during the clip. So goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, college football. We'll see you in August.
Howard sitting back there with time to throw. See the backers, they're moving. Here they come.
It's so dirty.
Heavy pressure. Howard delivers downfield.
This is bullshit.
Smith, he's got it. Jeremiah Smith hadn't had a touch in the second half.
You're muted, Jake.
Potential game clincher. First down at the 10.
Oh, they went 0, meaning they blitzed 7. They left.
So while this clip is playing, Donkey Kong, I'd just like to say we appreciate your comments. You seem to fit in with all my beliefs.
He needs a dog owner.
We need Donkey Kong to comment more on this show. That's for sure. Everyone, we'll see you next week with recap, and then the week after for Super Bowl preview. Goodbye, everyone.
Cheers, guys.